style, under the sign of a philosophical snail. So that's my joke, but I'll explain it. And so, yes, I think beautiful to be sharing the hour with you. I thought that talk was beautiful and had the balance of the full and the empty. I thought was very interesting, and the sensibility about AI. I'm very interested in mythology, which is what I'm going to speak about, and alchemy. And there's a certain sensibility that, as we were talking about, you know, AI being built on this aggregate of the many, many images. A myth forms not differently. The story told over hundreds of years, over and over again.
Yeah.
Each time it shapes the story, so they become, in a way, unauthored, or there's some interesting questions, so we could have an interesting dialogue, I bet, about these matters, yeah. But, and then also feel free to interrupt me with questions, because I'm speaking about hermetical matters, alchemy and stuff, and so it has its public face and its private face, and anything you want to know, hopefully I'll be able to actually answer it. We'll see. Yeah, that's my big job, so in my cosmic life. But I'll begin by telling you a story. I think so. Well, I'll lay a grounding very quickly about a sensibility about the imaginal. So there's an idea from the Sufis, or mystics of Islam, called the imaginal, which is, where it's translated by the scholar Henry Corbin, a Frenchman who wrote very beautifully. And the idea is that the imaginary, as you might find it in Ibn Arabi, for example, that the imaginary is not just bound by our heads, but is a place that you can travel, and that things can come to meet you through this medium. Almost like the paper itself that allows the ink to show us its images, things like this, or the pure ether of one's mind through which all manner of perceptions find their passage. And the sensibility is that as you travel in the imaginary, things that aren't just yourself can come to meet you, and through what I call philosophical gardening, you can help them to unfurl their leaves. Like Goethe speaks of this sensibility, and Rudolf Steiner of exact percipient fancy. So the sense is that if you study something and you really know it, say a cat in your house, or a tree you're interested in, or a country, or a word itself, a single letter, which of course begin as glyphs, and so all these carry root systems, as in their etymologies. That as you imagine properly with it, you may use the imaginary actually in a kind of towards the scientific methodology, that the actual plant can be allowed to explore itself, that the willow tree becomes Ophelia, for a little. So I'll tell you a story from Russia, and we'll see what happens. So once, there was a great Tsar, a great king, who had in the grounds of his palace a single tree which gave golden apples. And it was his greatest joy each day to go in the morning and count the apples. And as he proceeded with this through the slow churning years of his life, he noticed one morning that an apple was missing. And like the spine of his own body, the next day another apple, also gone. And this vexed him horribly. And so, a little bit of shaving cream, I imagine, behind his ear, he draws his 3 sons to him in his court, and he asks them each to spend a single night in the orchard where the tree is, and if they can determine what's happening to these golden apples, these, the gold of one's life, which he likes to count, he will give them half of his kingdom in life and half after he perishes. So it was. And I don't remember all of the brothers' names right now, but I'll invent them. I think it's Peter, Dmitri, and the youngest, I believe, is Ivan. And Peter and Dmitri each spend their night, and each claim not to have fallen to sleep, but in the morning say they saw nothing, but an apple is missing. Ivan, the youngest and least trusted, purely out of age, spends his evening, but he refuses to sit. And whenever he grows tired, he washes his eyes with the dew from the grasses. And by this dew, which the alchemists know that the dew is something special, it carries, they believe, a certain influence of the night, or between the hours, a liminal thing. When the sun is fully there, it's gone. As he is pacing around, he sees something in the dead of the night, which is a light in the distance, and it's growing closer. And he sees, from where he's hiding in a bush, that is a firebird. And the firebird alights on the branch and begins to, I imagine, caress an apple it's planning to eat. And Ivan, in his coarse bravery, sneaks up on the bird and, in a decisive moment, grabs its tail feather. And the bird alights, but he has the feather in his hand. And the feather glows. And he brings this feather to his father, and his father is very taken with it. And now he can think only of the feather. And each night in his room, the feather glows. And he changes his mind, and he tells his sons, actually, and it's important to say that the bird never returns after this. So he sets this task again to his 3 sons. Which of them can bring him the bird will inherit half of his kingdom in life and the rest in his death. Like there's a sensibility with the Alchemist, that the elements are alive, and they stand, that metaphors are real, but they may not be physical. And we are at least half invisible, and that's very true, I believe. And especially true, for example, in the photograph, the actual film itself. Does it take the form of these images, the silver? So it goes. Okay. Ivan, the youngest, sets out on his horse, and as he's traveling, looking for the firebird, he comes to a crossroads. And there are 3 roads, and there's a stone in the middle. And the stone reads, if you take the path on the left, you will die, but your horse will live. If you take the path on the right, you will live, but your horse will die. And the path in the middle, if you take this way, you will live a modest life, but diminish. And as the cold comes, so your bones will depart over the course of the years. Which this one reminds me of the dilemma of Achilles in the Iliad, which is that Achilles is almost a demigod. He's presented with a question. If he goes into battle, he knows he will die, but he will live forever in song. He will be in the Iliad. If he goes home, he will live a long life, but his name will fade from the registers. Ivan, being a young man, chooses the path on the right. And as he rides, I don't know for how long, and maybe no one does, from the bushes creeps a creature, which is a big gray wolf. And it suddenly, in a moment of striking, jumps up and tears the horse in half and departs. And Ivan is left with the destitution. And he keeps walking. And it said, I think, for 3 days, and on the 3rd day, he's sitting on a stump in an hour which is neither night nor day, and as the French say, entre chien et loup, the hour of the wolf and the dog, which is dusk, because you do not know if it's a wolf or a dog coming towards you in its silhouette. And so you do not know if you should fear or delight. The wolf returns, and the wolf speaks to him. And it says, yes, I know what it is that you are seeking. Get on my back. And now the horse has been changed to a wolf as his steed, and they ride for some days, and they come to the perimeter of another tsardom. And in this place, the firebird is kept in a greenhouse in the garden. And the wolf gives him a reprimanding. He says, climb the wall, take the bird, but leave the cage, which is a golden cage. And when Ivan is in the situation, he's in there, he sees that the cage indeed is very beautiful. What a cage. And he takes it with him, and as he does, he didn't notice there was a string of bells, and he's captured by guards, and he's thrown in front of the Tsar. And the Tsar says, all right, listen, I'll make a deal with you. You can have the bird. I actually don't know if he offers him the cage as well or not. But one tsardom over, there's a horse with a golden mane. If you bring me the horse, I'll give you the bird, you can go home. And it's agreed. He gets back on the wolf, they go one over. The same situation. There's a golden bridle, which he should not touch, and he does. And he's thrown in front of the Tsar, and the Tsar says, I'll give you the horse, and you can have the bird, and you can go home. But first, one tsardom over, there is a girl with golden hair, and I wish her to marry my son. And Ivan agrees. And when they reach this place, there's a mystery, but the wolf says, you fucked up those last 2 ones. Let me go in your stead. And the wolf transforms itself, and it becomes Ivan. And it climbs the wall, and it finds the girl, and they meet. And there's some rapport. And returning, as both Ivan and the girl Elena sit on the back of the wolf, they see each other, and they fall in love. You know how these things are. So they're going back. Now he's bringing the girl to the place of the horse. The wolf agrees again to go in his stead, and he turns into the girl. And at the moment, the king wanted the girl to marry his son, the prince. The wolf is getting married to the prince. They kiss, he turns into a wolf, he dashes through the stained glass, and the rest is history. They go to the next one. Again, the wolf becomes a horse with a golden mane. And a day later, the king goes out riding, hunting, and they see a fox, and the horse, which is really a wolf, turns into a wolf and dashes after the fox and vanishes. And the king is left alone with his rifle. Now, I think everything is true. I have forgotten actually the last one. Yeah, that's everything. Now they're going back home. And Ivan, like his father before him, he's counting his things, his golden treasures. And in this counting, suddenly he grows tired, inexplicably, outside of the wall of his home. And he sits under a tree, and he falls asleep. And his two brothers return, and they see what it is that is the situation. And they go to Ivan, and they cut off his head. And they take the girl by force, and they have the horse and the firebird, and they tell her, if you say anything, you'll go the same way. And they ride back home. As he's lying there with no head, and one presumes no life, blackbirds appear, and they begin to circle. And from the bushes, an old friend, from the rhododendron, from the strawberry bushes, the wolf. And in a moment of precision, he catches a blackbird in his teeth, and he speaks to the bird, and he says, call your children to you, and send one to each of the horizons. And from this they will return to me the water of life and the water of death. And then I will release you. And this is done, and when they reach there, they are combined, and the wolf kills the bird, but then pours it on them, and the bird is rejuvenated. And he pours the liquid on Ivan, and screws on the head, and Ivan awakes. And Ivan says, oh, what a strange dream I was having. And the wolf says, you would have been dreaming a while longer if it wasn't for me. And then they return into the courtyard, and they enter while the big feast is happening, and all is revealed. But the wolf has vanished. And this is the end of the tale. And so, alchemy works by a system of allegories. But the idea is that the stories themselves are alive, and that these symbols, which are as old as time, and everyone knows them, they're the imaginings of the things themselves here. So, there's a great alchemical recipe. I wonder if I have a postcard. I was just in the alchemical museum. Which is that I'll just tell you the secrets now, since everyone's in the room. Let me see if I have this one or not. Well, I don't know what you guys know about alchemy, but there's a great visual tradition. Basically, they made books that were encoded recipes that are like riddles. And the idea is that as you interpret them, something alchemical is happening in your mind, which is about. And the great search of alchemy is this key of transformation, the stone of the philosophers. And the sense is that that it's something, perhaps, there's a physical stone, which we can talk about, but there's also perhaps a non-physical stone, which is more important, which is that there's a thing that allows transformations to happen, and one does it all the time, seemingly, with one's own perception.
Neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity. Yes, like this. So it's something totally native to one, and that it's something but it's something you still have to find. There's a quote of a philosopher, a friend of mine, Charles Stein, which says, you are lost in possession of the only thing you have. And I like this idea, that we have the thing, or it appears in many traditions. Even like the cross of Christ is like an axis. And the sensibility that John Dee, the great sorcerer of the Elizabethan court, says this thing about the plus, that it's a way of demarcating the four elements, equidistant from a center. Yes, so in that line, I guess I'll pass around some books which I make. So I'm trying to make, inch by inch, making books in the same tradition, and inventing stories towards the idea that by imagining with different materials, they can talk to you. And I've done as well an alchemical apprenticeship, so I had some backing. So there's doubles of some of these, but I can pass them around if people want to look at them or whatever you want to do.